Today we're looking at the results from the Sapporo Champions League in Japan, which had almost 3,000 masters and was the debut major tournament for the Twilight Masquerade set. Now, the previous Champions League did have half of the Twilight Masquerade set, the Crimson Haze half, but this was the debut of Dragapult EX on the major tournament stage. So, we're on PTCG Legends today looking at these deck lists, and not all of the deck lists are here, but we do have 7 out of 8 of the top 8 deck lists. And then I've also found deck lists from City Leagues and Champions League Aichi to fill in the blanks for the archetypes that we don't have any lists for here. So, starting with first place, actually, the Maridon EX kind of lightning toolbox deck won this event. Now, Maridon EX fell off pretty hard in our Temporal Forces format compared to pre-rotation and pre-temporal forces. Pretty much Maridon plus Iron Hands just got replaced by the future Iron Hands deck. So still focusing on Ampy very much as a very strong attack, but it was being supported by the future archetype instead of Maridon EX. Now we're back to the Maridon EX build, and I think this is because this archetype seems to have, at the very least, an even matchup into Dragapult, very possibly favored, and also favored into Lugia. And Lugia got a huge buff from the Twilight Masquerade set, with actually a lot of the Crimson Haze cards, but overall gaining Legacy Energy and Blood Moon Ursaluna. We'll be looking at those cards when we get to the Lugia lists, but just giving some reasons why Maridon EX might be so powerful. Also, remember that Japan plays best of one, even through day 2, even through top 16, top 8, the finals. Everything is played in best of one, so that should be taken into account as a factor that could affect the decks that are being played and the decks that are succeeding. As for new cards in this Maridon deck, we only have one brand new card in here, and that's going to be Tatsugiri with the Attract Customers ability. Now, these are proxies from justinbasil.com, so some of the translations might not be 100% correct. But Tatsugiri has this ability that if it's in the active spot, you may look at the top 6 cards of your deck, reveal a supporter, and put it into your hand. So we're going to be seeing this card played a lot. Especially in decks that already have rescue boards and switches, and especially decks that don't have any good Pokemon to stick out there in the active, like on turn 1 going first, or after a slow turn 1 going second. It's nice to stick that Tatsugiri out there, get yourself a supporter, and you can just leave it there. And if it gets knocked out, you don't really care. If it doesn't get knocked out, you get extra use out of it next turn. Moving on, the Maridon deck defeated Gardevoir in the finals of this tournament, and the tournament was streamed. I actually watched Rahul Reddy kind of casting over some of the battles. You should definitely watch his casting of and commentary over the finals between Maridon and Gardevoir. By all means, I think Gardevoir was meant to win this match, but the Maridon player hit some very specific lines and got the cards they needed for those lines and were able to defeat the Gardevoir deck. But this Gardevoir deck is super interesting, playing 4 Irida instead of Arven, which is that's something new to see here. And we're also including the new A-Spec Hyper Aroma. Search your deck for up to 3 Stage 1 Pokemon and put them into your hand. I don't know that I really agree with that A-Spec, but it seems to have worked for this player. Now, the most unique thing about this is going to be the inclusion of 2 Dark Energy and the new Monkey Dory. We don't have the translated Monkey Dory here, so I'm just going to go over to Limitless. Monkey Dory has the ability currently translated as Adrenabrain. You may use this ability once a turn. If this Pokemon has any Dark Energy attached, move up to 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So, if we just exclude that it needs Darkness Energy attached, moving 3 damage from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon on a basic single prize Pokemon is kind of broken. That's really, really strong. So of course it's balanced by needing specifically a Dark Energy attached to it. Now that could be a little awkward for this deck, but think about the the utility that that effect provides. Not only are we moving damage off of one of our own Pokemon, so like maybe off of a Drifloon, so that we can get off of even numbers of damage counters to odd number of damage counters with the Psychic Embraces, or even using Gardevoir EX as your attacker, which is going to be pretty common these days in the current build of Gardevoir EX. So attach Psychic Embrace twice, you have 4 damage counters on yourself. The Monkey Dory can move 3 of those, bring you down to 300 health instead of down to 270 health after double Psychic Embrace. And then you swing for 190, but that can be turned into 220 essentially if you're moving that 3 to the active position on the opponent's Pokemon Monkey Dory. So Monkey Dory, really, really cool. It's awkward that you have to play Dark Energy in here. Maybe we could even see the Dark Energy be utilized for like attackers or something in the future. But yeah, so a little awkward that you have to run Dark Energy and then this Pokemon that's not really doing much else. But like I said, really, really incredible ability here, moving 3 damage from one of your own Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. And this isn't the only deck Monkey Dory was seen in. There was also a Blissey EX deck. I'm sure we'll see Monkey Dory paired with a lot of stuff over its time in standard format. But this was its big debut here and did not disappoint with being in the second place Gardevoir EX deck out of 2,800 players. Like I said, I don't think that this card is very good, but they're going for a more Irida for my Hyper Aroma and Radiant Greninja, Hyper Aroma, Triple Curlia, evolve them all. I thought the deck would just be better as Arven with TM Evo, because Arven also finds you your Bravery Charms, and you know, most of the time this deck is playing Hero's Cape as well, which this is not playing. So it'll be interesting to see where we go with the A spec. I think we'll see most Gardevoirs playing either Hero's Cape or Unfair Stamp moving forward. This might have just been, you know, the Gardevoir that played the best and got lucky and got the matchups they wanted, just happened to be playing Hyper Aroma, or maybe I'm wrong and Hyper Aroma is actually broken. So second place Gardevoir list here with Monkey Dory. Moving down, we've got third place Dragapult EX Xatu. So let's talk about Dragapult EX. I have not covered it on my channel so far. I've really wanted to cover the Japanese City League deck lists and stuff, but life has just been getting in the way of content, so we're finally covering the Dragapult stuff now. Of course, we start with Dreepy, but then we evolve up into Dracoloak, and this deck is playing 4 Dracoloak. So this is not only the middle stage of Dragapult, but it's also going to be draw support for this deck. It's currently translated as Reconnaissance Raid. Once a turn, you may look at the top 2 cards. You put one of them into your hand, put the other at the bottom of your deck. So this is going to be like a Pokedex, or an Airmail, or a trade-off, or there's been so many names for this ability and so many cards that do this effect in the past. Really good effect, though. If you set up a couple of Dracloaks, you can look at, you know, +2, +4, +6 cards a turn and get half of them. And then, you know, you'll eventually have to evolve some of them into Dragapult EX, but you get to have this stage 1 support that's ready to evolve into your main attacker, and it also offers you support. Finally, getting to the main attacker, of course, here, we've got Dragapult EX. Dragapult EX has 320 HP, and the most notable thing that we need to say about this card is that it has no weakness. If this was weak to a popular typing like Dark, you know, if they didn't terrestrialize this Dragapult, it was just a ghost Pokemon, it had the printed Dark weakness, I don't even think this card would be something I'm discussing right now. But because of the lack of weakness, the high HP, the low energy cost, the low retreat cost, you know, everything is just lining up for Dragapult EX to be a good card. So it seems they designed this very intentionally. You know, making sure it doesn't have a weakness to Charizard EX terrestrialized as Dark, making sure it doesn't share a weakness with something that's also strong, like Gardevoir or Lugia. Dragapult just doesn't have weakness, so it can be this kind of middle of the road. Can my deck deal with Dragapult EX? What is the meta doing to answer Dragapult EX? And it looks like the answer is Lugia and Maridon. I love when strategy has to come into play, and you know, decks aren't countering each other just because of printed weakness, and Dragapult's really forcing that. So you know, if Dragapult EX is spreading damage around a little at a time, but also chunking some pretty good damage in the active, you're going to need decks that can either tank that damage or prevent the bench damage or heal, or be aggressive. Maybe something like Maridon that's taking extra prizes on the Dracloaks and the Dreepies. Something that can prevent the damage on the bench, the damage counters, because of course Jirachi can't do that. But right now we're not seeing anything preventing damage counters being played. Something like Toadscroll EX, or I believe it's called Robska, that's kind of like Jirachi and Manaphy all in one. But anyway, Dragapult EX's attacks that I haven't even gotten to yet because I'm rambling about how well designed this card is to become an instant force in the metagame. The first attack, Jet Headbutt for 70, is actually not bad. That's pretty good, especially if you're whiffing damage, whiffing energy attachments. The energy gets removed, or often in early testing, I've found that, like, if you hit something for 200, let's say, Giratina V-Star. You hit it for 200 in the active, and then they switch it out for a healthy Giratina, knock out your Dragapult EX. If all you have is like one energy, a Dragapult EX, and a boss, you can close out that game by moving a damage with Radiant Alakazam, and then boss up the damage Tina Jet Headbutt. So Jet Headbutt, don't underestimate that attack. It's good for getting a little chip damage in early when you're getting off to a slow start or your energies are being removed. It's also good in the late game when you just need to get that last bit of damage in to take your last prize cards. But of course, the main attack here is going to be Phantom Dive, doing 200 damage for a fire and a psychic, and then put 6 damage counters on your opponent's benched Pokemon in any way you like. This is the main attack of the deck. 200 damage in the active from a tanky, no weakness Pokemon is nothing to scoff at, but it's also doing 6 damage counters to your opponent's bench Pokemon. So knocking out things like opposing Noctus, opposing Charmanders, opposing Pidgeys, Bidoofs. So this Dragapult EX is going to single-handedly force people to play higher HP basics, which is a really cool development in the metagame. So we'll probably see more 70 HP Charmanders, more 70 HP Bidoofs. The Pidgeys, I don't think, are lucky enough to have a 70 HP Pidgey, so we'll have to see what happens there. But pretty much anything 60 HP or less is no longer safe because of Dragapult EX. And Xatu, not a new card, but we'll just go over it real quick. That's going to be your way of making sure you always are able to attack with Dragapult. Attach a basic Psychic Energy card from your hand to one of your benched Pokemon, and you also get to draw 2 cards. And as for other new cards in this deck, it's just going to be the Unfair Stamp, which is very unfair. This card is disgusting. So you can play this card only if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Each player shuffles their hand into their deck, then you draw 5 cards and your opponent draws 2. This card is devastating because even if it is the very beginning of the game, your opponent takes 1 prize card to go down to 5 prize cards and you're at 6. You can immediately respond next turn with this Unfair Stamp, even that early in the game. Most decks, most players are not going to be ready to be put down to a 2-card hand on like turn 2. So Unfair Stamp, I really love this card. I think it's great for the game because it's going to allow decks to come back from a slower start. It's going to allow decks to punish aggression as opposed to stabilizing your board prior to that aggression. So yeah, I'm really excited to play with Unfair Stamp, and I'm not excited to get Unfair Stamped. Next, in 4th place, we've got Lugia Archeops. Now, Lugia Archeops is a very, very old archetype at this point, so I won't spend too much time talking about the inner workings of the deck itself. However, there are a couple of new cards we need to talk about. So, first, we have this Carmine supporter. It's just discard your hand, draw 5. But if you go first, you can play this card on your first turn. This card feels like it was made for Lugia, in this format at least. Like, Lugia is the first card that comes to mind when reading this supporter card, because Lugia wants to discard Archeops and wants to draw cards, but it also wants to go first. And that's always kind of been the battle with Lugia. You know, if you go first, you don't get to research or Serena to get Archeopses into the discard pile. You have to be working with items only. And also, Lugia likes to play one or two Lumineon. So, playing Lumineon, I wouldn't even be surprised if we see more lists go up to two Lumineon, two Carmine, something like that, because you can just Ultra Ball for Lumineon, Lumineon for Carmine, and then you're guaranteed playing that supporter on turn one going first, which I imagine has got to feel pretty good for Lugia. Other new cards in the deck here include Legacy Energy as the A spec. It provides a Rainbow Energy, and once per game, if the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage from an attack, your opponent takes one fewer prize card. So this only works once per game. If you recycle the Legacy Energy, you could attach it again and get that Rainbow Energy effect, but you only get that prize card reduction effect once per game. So something very unique about this card. Also very unique, obviously, is being an A-Spec Energy, because back in the day we didn't have these. Although this is sharing the spotlight with Neo Upper Energy, which also might see play because of Dragapult EX. The other new card here is Blood Moon Ursaluna EX, kind of like a Radiant Charizard that's colorless. Just very strong and very good for Lugia, because it's providing you with a colorless attacker with massive health, pretty good damage output, and it's not weak to lightning. So it doesn't share the weakness with Lugia, which is really nice. And then Legacy Energy also makes Iron Hands usable in Lugia, because Luminous Energy obviously didn't work here. And same with Lumineon. Now you could actually attack. You could actually attack with Aqua Return now because of the Legacy Energy. So Legacy Energy could go to Lumineon, Aqua Return, it goes back into the deck, and then you could use it later on. So another reason why I wouldn't really mind playing 2 Lumineon, since we can Aqua Return now. And also, you'll see here, like I was talking about with the Dragapult, this is the good Minccino, but it has 60 health. So people are playing some of the, quote, bad Minccino just to have a better time against Dragapult. So that was the top 4. Now we're going on to number 5 with Dragapult EX Lost Zone. Yeah, top 8 out of 2,800 players, Dragapult EX Lost Zone. So the validity of these results are just pretty massive, in my opinion. You have to go through so many rounds of best of 1 to make it to this stage of the event. So, Lost Zone Engine, Comfey, Cramorant, Sableye, Radzard, Manaphy. Got the Colress's Experiment, you got the Pokegear, 3 Mirage Gate, plenty of switching options, Jet Energy and the switching items, even the Stadium lineup. All of this just looks pretty standard for Lost Zone, except for the Ionos. And then we've got our Dragapult line, 4 Dreepy, 3 Dracloak, 3 Dragapult EX. So you got the Cramorants for early, and then late game, you've got a lot to pick from. You've got Dragapult EX, Radiant Charizard, and Sableye. So this looks like a really fun deck to play. It also looks like it can compete with just about anything, because you have this single prize route. Like, you can pretty realistically play as a Sablezard deck if you wanted to with this, and just have the Dracloaks on the bench supporting you with the raid ability. And if you ever want to, you just evolve Dragapult EX and you go in with this 320 HP, no weakness, 200 damage, and 60 damage to the bench. So it kind of reminds me of Lost Zone Giratina in that way, where you have this high HP, no weakness, really good attacker that you can establish, except this is actually evolving from Dracloak, which is a rule box Pokemon, so potentially even better than Giratina because of that. In 6th place, we've got Snorlax Stall, and there's just a couple of cards we need to talk about here. Some Snorlax Stall decks are including Blood Moon or Ursaluna, because it's easy to attack with if you need to remove a threat, but this in particular list is looking to be focused on the trapping, not really control at all. We're just trying to block, make somebody not be able to retreat. And the way they're doing that is with the new Fable Flute. I'm not sure what this is being translated as. I don't think that's the correct translation, but reveal the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck and put any number of basic Pokemon you find there onto your opponent's bench. And this is an item card. It's even better than Erica's Invitation. Kind of crazy. And then, of course, playing 2 boss, 4 counter catcher, plenty of ways to recycle and find supporter cards. And then also the new card here is Handy Circulator. If it's attached to your active Pokemon and that Pokemon's damaged by an opponent's attack, move an energy attached to the attacking Pokemon to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So you can disrupt them with that a little as well. But really what we're looking at here is this Flute This flute goes crazy for Snorlax Stall. There's no getting around that. So Snorlax Stall getting another top 8 at a massive event. The 7th place Maridon, unfortunately, we do not have the list for. And then we also have another Dragapult Xatu in top 8. So looking at the top 8, 3 Dragapults made it into top 8. And 2 of them were Dragapult Xatu, 1 was Dragapult Lost Zone. And this list is playing Prime Catcher as the ace spec. We've got the Tatsugiri here, we've got the Radiant Alakazam. Pretty similar to the other one that we looked at. So yeah, we won't spend too much time on this. Just know that there were 2 Dragapult Zatus in the top 8. Then we've got 2 more Lugias. So this Lugia is playing double Lumineon, like I mentioned, but they're not playing any of the new Carmine, which is kind of surprising. Of course, definitely going with that Legacy energy, going with 3 of the, quote, bad Minccino with the 70 HP. Then we've got another Lugia at 12th. This one is playing 4 Carmine, also the Legacy Energy, Blood Moon, Iron Hands. So we're seeing some trends across some of these lists, although that 12th place list, not playing, let me see. I'm sorry, the 9th place list, not playing Carmine, kind of breaks that trend. But the 12th place list is playing it, and then we do not have the list for 14th. And then the last list here we'll look at on this page, and then I have some more to look at on other pages, is the 11th place Maridon, playing Prime Catcher, of course. Looking pretty similar to the first place list. Doesn't have the Zapdos. Did the first place list also have Tatsugiri in it? It did. So, yeah, definitely some differences, but still the same archetype nonetheless. And then other archetypes we had in the top 16 here include Ancient Box, Gouging Fire EX. Now, seeing what the exact Gouging Fire EX deck list looks like will definitely be interesting. And then we also have Lawson Giratina and Lawson Box. So I found some lists for these archetypes, although they're not the exact lists. Here's a first place City League list of Ancient Box from May 6th. So very, very recent list for an Ancient Box list from Japan. They're playing this Secret Box Ace spec. Search your deck for a Pokemon tool, a supporter, a stadium card. So one of each. Oh, I'm sorry, one of each item, tool, supporter, stadium, and put them into your hand. I'm not really sure that you should play this instead of the box. I'm sorry, not the box, the drum, the ancient drum, because that adds another ancient card to your discard pile. Or Prime Catcher, because Prime Catcher is just an extremely strong card. I feel like either of those would be better. And we also see Enhanced Hammer, which is a reprint in here. Next, we have a Gouging Fire list. This was 11th place in a City League, so not a great placement, but I just wanted to show you guys what a Gouging Fire EX deck could potentially look like. We've got Max Belt doing a lot of damage. We've got Monkey Dory also helping with damage. Energy Switch, so you could attach Dark to Monkey Dory, use its ability, then Energy Switch it off to an attacker. Magma Basin as well to help with energy acceleration. So some pretty cool stuff going on here. Then we've got a first place Lost Zone Giratina list. Nothing really to talk about here in my opinion. I mean, you got Canceling Cologne. I doubt that'll stay as an inclusion in Giratina, but I could be wrong. Maximum Belt does seem correct for Lost Zone Giratina, just because it allows you to Lost Impact, knock out a Dragapult, and then you could Star Requiem a Dragapult. So I do think Maximum Belt's something that we'll see more often in Lost Zone Giratina now. And then we also have the 8th place Champions League Aichi. So this is just like 3 or 4 weeks prior to the Champions League Sapporo. This was before Dragapult EX came out, so not the exact list that we'll see when we finally do get that top 16 Lost Zone Box deck list, but just something to hold you guys over for what modern Lost Zone Box deck lists are looking like in this format. So a big shout out to PTCGlegends.com for having these results and deck lists up here, and thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more Pokemon TCG content, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.